so many major journalists in India, especially women, who've been, like tagged with terms like prostitute, like anti-national. So, this is this new term coming up in India where, whenever any journalist talks about something which goes against the interest of the government, they're often called anti-nationalist. So,
can you tell us a famous dish from Uzbekistan that everyone should try?
Beti dabao or beti bhagao. So it's actually a Hindi term which means suppress the daughter and chase away the daughter.
Shall we start?
Yeah.
We are glad to have you here, and we should start off the discussion by your personal journey, how you came to be interested in journalism, and how is the path of journalism in Uzbekistan usually. So, yeah.
If I speak about my early experience, how I was engaged in a journalism, it started from my childhood, and when I was 6th and 7th grade school girl, I started to write something and sent to several newsrooms in a local newspaper, and I had a very strong desire to be a journalist and to speak more about some issues in my society, which is remained some impatient, which is not somehow people don't want to speak about this kind of issue. But I had some desire to make people to pay attention to this issue. That's why I started to think that journalism is a good tool to show some problems, some issues which is related to the community, and attract the people's and the responsibilities, attention to the problem and solve it. Yes, journalism, it is not solving the problem. The main main task of the journalists and journalism is to show the problem, to show the issue. That's why starting this time I step by step worked on myself and started to act as a journalist. And when I was a bachelor student during the 2012, I started to work as a correspondent at the local newspaper, and mostly I tried to cover some social and political issues, and mostly related to human rights, gender equality, and mostly children's rights, because in my country, the most painful themes of the society is children, related to the children and protecting their rights. And that's why starting this time I worked as a correspondent. Then I worked in several TV stations, local TV station, and it continues over 6 years. And after getting my master degree, I continued my career as a journalism educator, media educator. But it doesn't stop my career on a journalism. Nowadays, I work also as a freelancer. I don't work in newsrooms or TV stations, but if I feel some kind of, for example, issue or problem, I cannot stop myself to speak about it, and I write more, and I try to publish on my social media profile or some kind of media outlets.
Yeah.
So according to you, has the freedom of speech changed or evolved over time in Uzbekistan? And like, how do you see people expressing themselves today in your country?
Freedom of speech and media freedom is somehow controversial issue in my country, not only in my country, but in all Central Asian countries, because most countries or most societies, they have some kind of stereotypes or some kind of understanding that we live in some kind of pressure, we live in some kind of, for example, censorship. But Partially it's true, partially it's not true. Now I will explain what is the real issue here. For example, when I started my early career more than 10 years ago, I felt at that time the strong pressure, the strong censorship. If I wrote some kind of, for example, material, prepare some kind of material for the coming issue of the newspaper, I need to show it more than 3 or 4 specialists in the editorship. If they prove it, if they give me the permission to publish it, then I could publish it. But nowadays, the restrictions or some kind of censorship decrease it a little bit, but we cannot say that it is the full of freedom of speech or full of the media freedom. I don't want to say like this kind of word, because it's not real issue, it's not real situation. But after coming the second president, I mean the Shavkat Mirziyoyev, we felt some reforms, we felt some kind of, for example, change in our media landscape, starting from 2016 until 2019. During this 2 or 3 years of the beginning of the the first period of the presidential election, the president tried to give more freedom to the media, tried to give more openness, and called all governors and policymakers, governmental organizations to be open, to provide the transparency, to be friendly with the journalists, to make cooperation with media outlets. But starting 2020, the process is changing somehow. And I feel not only me, other journalists also felt that the situation is changing, not for the good side, but for the bad side. And again, they felt the censorship by the government, some harassment, some other tools. And most interesting thing in this situation, for example, until during the period of the first president, they used the government, the government used mostly the hard censorship, hard type of the censorship. They try to, for example, jail the journalists, they make some hard harm to the journalists. But recent years, or in this years, I felt mostly the soft censorship. The government tried to use some instruments, some tools to use the soft censorship, because it is a good, logic for the government, because they award the journalists with very good awardings. They present something to the journalists, even car, even apartments, some kind of, even governmental medals or scholarships, like this kind of. And I think, according to the theory of the journalism and mass communication, I think that it is a soft censorship, because the government, like this, if I'm the journalist and I get some kind of, for example, very big present or award from the government, and it makes me to not to write somehow critically about the government. Yes, it's a good way. And the government start to think that hard censorship is useless, and it can be criticized by the other countries, by the other, for example, international organizations, human rights organization, media organization. And but soft censorship, it is somehow very logical too, which is very logical and very useful. very useful because it makes the journalist to feel the self-censorship, not the censorship by the side of the government, but journalists start to feel, to make some self-censorship inside of them. It's the difference, yeah.
Absolutely, and Mukarram, when I was listening to you talk about, these different forms of censorship and, how women journalists especially have been, like facing a series of problems, I've just come to think about how it happens in India. So, I'll share a few things with you about what happens in India. Because, of course, I think, the global journalism landscape is more or less same because we have, like different forms of censorship in different countries. But, I mean, there are still some local, regional effects of, journalism in each country. So, in India, even though like women journalists have somehow managed to shatter the glass ceiling, but, it's more of now online threats that have started coming up, I mean, we have so many major journalists in India, especially women, who've been, like tagged with terms like prostitute, like anti-nationals. This is this new term coming up in India where, whenever any journalist talks about something which goes against the interest of the government, they're often called anti-nationalist. And it brings me to this really humorous thing. So I'll give you a little background about that. So, there's this very big government project in India, which is called Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. So that means save the girl child and educate the girl child. But now it becomes the version that we're seeing in India now. It's more of, Beti Dabao or Beti Bhagao. So it's actually a Hindi term, which means suppress the daughter and chase away the daughter. So now it's actually being increasingly linked to, female journalists, where, they're expected to be just pretty faces and, like reading from the teleprompter when they're on television. And if they're not on television, then talk about something that the government wants them to talk, because I mean, there's been a high tendency that female journalists just talk about those soft topics, like, I mean, we'll find a lot of females just being, limited to, let's say, lifestyle or, something related to fashion or something related to, soft kind of topics. And it's often believed that, these complicated questions and these things are more of like, a boy's things to do, and I mean, it's not just that, and we all are aware of that hashtag Me Too movement throughout. And, I mean, that was one way when we got to know about so many sexual harassment cases coming up in newsrooms. And, I think the majority of that was always limited to journalists, right? And it becomes all the more, a necessary thing to talk about, That's why we're just so grateful for you to join, because I think this is a field that needs to be talked about. And, like whenever a lot of journalists are like, let's say sent to, a conflicting area to, like, let's say cover a story, which is kind of complicated. I think in India, it has been a tendency to, for only the male journalists going to those places and covering them, because, females are considered as a liability, as because obviously because, they're often told that, okay, you're a woman, you're a liability, your security
The same tendency in my country.
Yeah, you're often told that, you're a liability because we'll have to protect you at the end of the day. And it's just so stupid. And of course, then anti-nationalism being linked to free speech because, I mean, of course, like the traffic rules in our country, it's always on the paper. Like the democracy in our country, it's always on paper. Free speech is never, completely practiced. And I think, it's something which is not just about India. It's also about, the global journalistic landscape wherein if you're too free, if you speak about something that is real, something that you want to talk about, you're often termed as anti-national. You're often termed as somebody, who's not good for the country, somebody who's not favored in, of the government. And then I think, in that sense, and you were correctly pointing out, it becomes more of like a conscious choice, like a self-censorship thing that, you have to be conscious about what you speak and what you don't speak, because government is constantly busy with, like implementing those soft and hard censorship rules. And I think it's all about, how thick your skin is when it comes to being a part of journalism. So yeah, I'm really happy to have you on board. And yeah, these were some things that I wanted to share with you as well.
Thank you very much. And I want to share one case which is happened in 4 days. We have the very famous journalist, the Anora Sadiqova. She is a very active in our media landscape, and she demonstrates herself as a women rights activist, human rights activist. And if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 days ago, she posted very long post on her social media and apologizes the society to be a journalist. Please apologize me that I'm a journalist. Yes, I am a journalist, but I cannot serve for your how to say benefit. But journalists should serve for the not for the government, but for the public, for the society. But I cannot do this. That's why please apologize me. And after this, so many discussion grows up, and I read recently that internal affairs, Republic Internal Affairs, called this woman journalist and made some kind of conversation and somehow punishment for her for this post. And from this case, you can how to say predict the degree of the freedom of speech in country. Yeah.
And
It's
of
a
course,
real case.
it is
Yeah.
very true, Mukarram, because we have so many more examples like that. We have plenty of them in India as well. I think internet has sort of exacerbated all of these issues because it was somehow brought into be to democratize journalism, but I think it's going against it because there's this new tendency of now people who are sort of bloggers, or you can call as people who use social media, and they call themselves journalists, bringing a very biased opinion out there, being very prejudiced in that sort, right? So I think now social media and internet is kind of creating more problems because like female journalists, like you mentioned that she had to actually post an apology letter, right? Then how it's creating more problems than solutions. So it's true, it's
Yeah.
also in India.
Okay. Can we go on the next question?
Yes, Anshika.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to know, since we were discussing about social media, do you think that there are different forms of activism that have emerged in Uzbekistan because of social media? Like there are people who are posting more about incidents or events that happen with them on social media. Has it changed the situation, media landscape in Uzbekistan positively, or according to you, it's negative only?
I cannot call it positive. It can create some kind of, for example, problems for media consumers because bloggers and vloggers, they are not professional journalists. They don't own the special education on them on mass media and communication. They don't have tools how to, for example, express the information, how to distribute, disseminate it, how to check it, how to make fact checking. It can be cause some misinformation, disinformation, and it makes some problem among the media consumers, which information is true or which is information is not true, and they don't know how to use the ways tools of the giving information. For example, if there is some kind of accident, for example, for example, according to the real journalism and journalism education, if you are, for example, covering some kind of car accident or suicide or something, you are not allowed as a professional journalist to show the real situation. It can be the how to say case for some other people who are very, for example, near to this situation. If you, for example, now, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 months ago, we had this kind of case. One woman with 3 children fell down from the ninth floor of the apartment, ninth grade of the apartment, and she had a conflict with her husband, and in some kind of situation, she took all 3 children and fell down from the 8th floor. And
Oh my
so many bloggers went to this apartment and showed the everything and describing the situation and describing how she felt down, where, how, like this kind of. And it is a case for other people. It's a case for other women who have some kind of, for example, psychological trauma,
Yeah.
yes, with the husband, with other family members. But if they are professional journalists, they know about this kind of rules, how to cover the issue. But bloggers and vloggers, they don't know about it. That's why it's a somehow problematic issue. And from other side, bloggers and vloggers, their priority is not the giving information. Their priority is somehow making money.
Yeah.
For example, journalists works for giving information. But bloggers and vloggers, they use the information for making money. It's not good. That's why I call that this situation, it's not the good, it's not the positive.
Of course, Mukarram, I completely agree. It's more about exploitation of, a certain incident or situation for what? Mere likes, or, like merely getting that fame of, like we popularly call that 10 minutes of fame. So it's basically exploitation of some incident for that. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I reckon you that.
Yeah, yeah. And some organizations or some people, for example, they hire bloggers and vloggers to solve some kind of problem which is related to the government. They use the bloggers and vloggers as a tool. Yes, it's not
Yeah.
good. If the organization, if the people or public, if they have some kind of problem, they need to uh give about it. They need to tell openly in a media platforms. Yes, professional journalists should cover the problem, not only bloggers and vloggers, because they are not professional. They cannot cover the issue objectively.
Right.
Yeah.
On that note, what advice would you give aspiring or young journalists about who want to report about the human rights situation in such challenging environment? What would your advice be for them?
If you ask me, my advice to young journalists who want to cover, for example, fashion, who want to cover the, for example, cinema, and I have tons of advices, but human rights, the first thing, if I'm not mistaken, it is the safety. It's the safety because in the country like Uzbekistan, the strong censorship by the government side, if you dare to cover human rights, you need to take care about your safety. Because the cases, the situations and happenings show that if you come across some kind of problem while covering, while doing your professional work, if you come some kind of problem, the editorship or any other responsible organization, they don't want to protect you.
Yes.
For example, 2 or 3 months ago, I have the student Sarvinos, who uh, she's a second year bachelor degree student, and at the same time she works in a online media platform which is called Kunuz, very famous in Uzbekistan, very high-ranking media platform. And one day she was arrested by public internal affairs ministry, and they took away the phone, all gadgets of the Sarvinos, I mean the young journalist. And if I'm not mistaken, 14 hours, no one knows any information about this girl. 14 hours. Then after 14 hours, she came back to home and informed the audience that she's alive, and she was in a for example, this kind of place and no any other information. But during this process, the editorship of the KNUS or any other organization didn't do anything to find her, to protect her. After, for example, coming back to home, the organization or the editorship, uh, for example, maybe she needs some kind of physical or some kind of psychological help, for example, yes. For example, in famous media outlets, if you have some traumas, they hire for you for their journalists some kind of psychologist, yes, to help them. But in my country, it's impossible, and organization didn't do like this kind of stuff. That's why the safety should be controlled by the journalist himself or herself. It's one thing. And the next thing is if you want to cover human rights, your legal knowledge. Your legal knowledge should be very powerful, and you need to know the legislation of this country. What is the for example, permitted to cover, not to cover like this kind of, and then good networking. Good networking relationships is very important if you want to cover the human rights or a human rights issue. It helps you if you have some kind of problems. If you have networking with, for example, other organization, you can ask them to help you. Yes, it's also important, I guess.
They're very true. I agree with all of them, Mukarram. Thank you very much. Coming from a seasoned journalist like you, they all make very much sense. And yes, the landscape is very much same in India as well. I'll agree with you there. When you gave this particular example, we see numerous arrests happening here every day as well. I personally want to thank you for taking out time and speaking with us. And it's so beautiful to have you as our very first member to the Global Ambassadors Program. And we'll stay in touch. And I, as the founder of the council, want to thank you personally for being a part of this session today. And on the behalf of my team, we all were so excited to speak with you.
Thank you very much.